There's a voicemail icon on my phone from that day that still shows a number I never cleared. 36 missed calls, sitting there in a little red bubble, all from a 6-hour window I spent standing in a backyard in a wedding dress, watching the folding chairs stay empty. My name is Teresa Maddox. I'm 31 years old, and I work as a 911 dispatcher, which means I've spent the last 8 years of my life listening to people's worst 5 minutes and learning how to find the one fact that actually matters underneath all the noise. This story cost me a relationship with my parents that took almost a year to even start rebuilding, and it cost my sister something she's still paying for. If you're new here, I tell these stories slow and straight, no shouting, just what happened. Stay a while. I should tell you about the chairs first, because the chairs are where this whole thing starts to make sense. My fiancé, Daniel, and I got married on the second Saturday in June, in my husband's aunt's backyard out past Glenwood, the one with the big oak tree and the slope down toward the creek. We couldn't afford a venue, not really, not on a dispatcher's salary and a high school shop teacher's salary combined, so we did it the way a lot of people do it now, borrowed folding chairs, a friend who does flowers as a side hustle, a cousin with a decent camera. 42 chairs, set in rows of 6, with a little aisle down the middle made of 2 strips of burlap somebody's mother had ironed flat. I counted those chairs 3 times that morning. I want you to understand that. 3 separate times, walking the rows in my slip and curlers, counting like I was double-checking a dispatch log, because counting things has always been how I keep myself steady when I'm scared. I have one sister, Brianna. She's 28, 3 years younger than me, and growing up, Brianna was always the one things happened around. Not because she did anything wrong, necessarily, just because she has that kind of presence, the kind of person a room organizes itself around without anyone deciding to let it. My mother, especially, has always orbited her a little closer than she's orbited me. I'm not saying that to be bitter. I'm saying it because it's true, and you need to know it's true for the rest of this story to make sense. 6 weeks before my wedding, Brianna got engaged. Big surprise proposal at a Mets game, Jumbotron and everything, her boyfriend Curtis down on one knee behind home plate. She called me that night crying happy tears, and I cried with her, genuinely happy for her, because whatever complicated feelings I had about being the older sister who got less attention, I never once wished anything but good things for Brianna. That part matters. Hold on to that. For weeks before my wedding, Brianna and my mother decided to throw an engagement party. For Brianna. The same weekend as my wedding. I want to slow down here because this is where most people watching assume I'm exaggerating, and I'm not, and the way it actually unfolded is worse than a clean betrayal because nobody set out to betray me. It crept in sideways, the way most real damage does. My mother called me on a Tuesday evening. I remember it was a Tuesday because Tuesdays are my long shift at the dispatch center, 12 hours, and I was eating a sandwich standing up at my kitchen counter when she called. She said, "Honey, I need to ask you something, and I need you to not get upset." That's never a good opening line. In my line of work, when somebody starts a call with "don't panic," it usually means panic is exactly the correct response. She told me Curtis's parents had a conflict with every other weekend in June and July, some family reunion thing on their end, and the only weekend that worked for everyone, Curtis's whole extended family, who apparently were flying in from out of state, was the second Saturday in June. My wedding day. I said, "Mom, that's literally my wedding day." And she said, "And I want to get this exactly right because I've replayed it 100 times, she said, "I know, sweetheart, but your wedding is small, it's just the two of you really, and Brianna's party is the only chance to get everyone together, and you'll still have your wedding either way, won't you? It's not like we're asking you to move it." I sat with that for a long moment. They weren't asking me to move my wedding. They were just choosing, very calmly, very reasonably in their own minds, to not be at it. I told Daniel that night, and he did the thing he always does, which is go very quiet and then ask one precise question. He said, "So who's actually coming to ours?" I started making calls the next day, the way I always do when I need to know what's actually true instead of what people are implying. Dispatch work has trained me out of assuming. You don't dispatch an ambulance based on what somebody might mean. You ask the exact question and you wait for the exact answer. My father, coming to the wedding, no question, he told me flatly that nothing was pulling him away from walking his daughter down the aisle, and I believed him completely, and I want to be clear that my father never wavered, not once, through any of this. My mother, going to Brianna's party. She said she'd try to come to the wedding reception later that evening if the party wrapped up early enough. My Aunt Carol, different family, different Carol than you might be picturing, my mother's sister, going to Brianna's party. My grandmother, 81 years old, who I'd specifically scheduled an early wedding so she wouldn't have to be out late, going to Brianna's party, because Brianna had personally driven out to see her and explained how much it would mean. One by one, the RSVPs I'd been counting on for 8 months started sliding off my side of the ledger and onto Brianna's. 11 people, total, who had told me yes to my wedding back in the fall, ended up at my sister's engagement party instead. 11 out of a guest list of 42. I never once heard Brianna say, "Don't come to Teresa's wedding." I want to be fair about that, because it's true. What I heard about, secondhand, repeated to me by my cousin who felt guilty enough to tell me, was Brianna saying things like, "I just feel like everyone always shows up for Teresa, this is finally my moment, and Curtis's whole family is only in town this once, I really need everyone there." Nothing cruel on its face. Just a slow, steady pull, person by person, framed as need instead of want, and people who loved her, and people who, if I'm honest, had always found it easier to give her what she wanted than to disappoint her, followed that pull right out of my backyard and into hers. Here's where I have to be honest about my own part in this, because I promised you I wouldn't make myself the perfect victim, and I'm not. I never told my family how much it hurt. Not really. Every phone call where my mother explained another person who'd switched their RSVP, I said some version of, "Okay, I understand, family is complicated, do what you need to do." I am extremely good, professionally, at staying calm on a call while someone tells me something terrible. I can keep my voice level while a stranger describes a car accident in real time. I used that exact skill on my own mother, for 6 straight weeks, instead of ever once saying the true thing, which was, "This is breaking my heart, please don't do this." I told myself I was being mature. I told myself I didn't want to be the bridezilla making everyone choose. But really, I think some old, tired part of me already expected to come second to Brianna, had expected it for 31 years, and it felt almost easier to just let it happen quietly than to fight for something I half believed I wasn't going to win anyway. Daniel noticed. About 2 weeks out, he sat me down and said, "You've called your mom 11 times this month and not once asked her to come." That stopped me cold, because he was right, and I hadn't even noticed I was doing it. I still didn't ask. I want you to sit with that. Even after he said it out loud, I still didn't pick up the phone and say the plain true thing. I let the day arrive instead. The wedding morning, like I said, I counted the chairs 3 times. 42 chairs. By 9 that morning I already knew, from the group text my mother sent, to the whole extended family, not even to me directly, that the party for Brianna was happening at 2 o'clock, same day, across town at the Hendricks Events Hall, and that everyone's so excited. My wedding started at 11. By 11:15, walking down that strip of ironed burlap on my father's arm, I counted again, out of pure old habit, the way you check a pulse even when you already suspect what you're going to find. 19 people in the chairs. Out of 42 invited. My father walking me down. Daniel's whole side, mostly intact, because his family doesn't do the things mine does. My side, my grandmother's empty chair in the front row with a little bouquet someone had set there out of kindness, like a memorial for a person who wasn't dead, just elsewhere. My mother's chair, empty. Aunt Carol's chair, empty. I didn't cry during the ceremony. People remember that about me. Daniel's aunt told me afterward she'd never seen a bride so calm, and I just smiled and said something about being a dispatcher. You learn to keep your voice steady no matter what's happening on the other end of the line. I didn't tell her the truth, which was that I wasn't calm because I was strong. I was calm because some part of me had been bracing for exactly this for 6 weeks, had practically rehearsed it, the way you rehearse bad news you already know is coming. It was at the reception, around 4 in the afternoon, that my phone started buzzing in the little drawstring bag I'd hung from my chair, and it didn't stop. 36 calls came in over about 90 minutes. My mother, mostly. My Aunt Carol a few times. My cousin twice. I let almost all of them go to voicemail because I was at my own wedding reception, dancing badly with my new husband to a song his uncle had picked, and I was not about to let my phone run my wedding day a second time. Around 5:30, my father, who'd stayed at my wedding the entire time like he said he would, finally checked his own phone and walked over to me with a strange look on his face. He said, "You should probably listen to one of these." I stepped into the kitchen of Daniel's aunt's house, still in my dress, and played the most recent voicemail. It was my mother, and her voice was shaking in a way I'd genuinely never heard before in 31 years. She said, "Teresa, honey, please call me back. Something happened with Grandma. She's okay, but she had a fall at the party and we're at the hospital, and I need you, I need my daughter, please call me back." My grandmother had fainted at Brianna's engagement party, dehydrated from the heat in a room that apparently had broken air conditioning, and had gone down hard enough to need stitches above her eyebrow. She was going to be fine. But for 90 minutes, while I was dancing at my own reception, my mother had been standing in an emergency room hallway calling her older daughter's phone over and over, because in the one moment that actually frightened her, I was who she reached for. That's not me being vindictive in telling you this. I want to be honest about how complicated that felt, sitting in that kitchen. Part of me, the part that had spent 6 weeks swallowing hurt, felt a flash of something ugly and satisfied, like, now you understand who actually matters to you. But under that, almost immediately, came something truer and harder, which was just plain fear for my grandmother, and underneath that, the strange, sad realization that even on the day my family had collectively chosen Brianna's party over my wedding, the instinct to call me, specifically, in the actual emergency, had never gone anywhere. It had just been buried under 31 years of habit that said Brianna gets the attention and Teresa gets the steadiness. I drove to the hospital still in my wedding dress, Daniel beside me in his rented tux, both of us silent most of the way. My mother was in the hallway outside the ER bay when I got there, and the second she saw me, she started crying in a way I had never once seen her cry, not at funerals, not at anything. My grandmother was sitting up in the bed behind the curtain, a little bandage over her eyebrow, already complaining that the stitches itched, which told me she really was fine. Brianna was there too, still in her party dress, mascara streaked down both cheeks, and the second she saw me in my wedding gown, standing in a hospital hallway instead of at my own reception, something in her face just collapsed. This is the moment in the story where, if it were a different kind of story, I'd have screamed at everyone in that hallway. I'd thought about it, honestly, plenty of times over those 6 weeks, rehearsed exactly what I might say if I ever let myself say it. But standing there, watching my mother cry and my grandmother wave off the worry and my sister fold in on herself with guilt, I didn't feel like screaming anymore. I felt very, very calm, the same calm I use on a call when someone's about to do something they can't take back and needs one steady voice telling them exactly what to do next. I looked at my mother, and I said, "I'm glad you called me. I'll always pick up for something like this. But I want you to remember, next time you're deciding what matters, that I would have done the same for you, and today you didn't even ask." That was it. 2 sentences. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list every grievance from the last 6 weeks. I just said the plain, exact thing, the way you'd state a fact over dispatch radio, no embellishment, because the embellishment isn't what makes people understand. The precision is. My mother didn't say anything back, not right away. She just nodded, very small, and pressed her hand against her mouth. My grandmother was the witness in this story, and I think she earned that more than anyone, because she's the one who said the thing afterward that I keep coming back to. A few days later, once she was home and resting, I went to see her, still a little raw from the whole week. She patted the seat next to her on the couch and said, "I sat in that chair at your sister's party, in that hot room, and you know what I kept thinking before I went down? I kept thinking, I should be at Teresa's wedding right now, watching her walk down the aisle, and instead I'm here because it was easier to say yes to the louder ask." She wasn't trying to make anyone feel guilty. She was just telling the truth, plainly, the way old people sometimes finally allow themselves to. "I only thought everyone always knew you'd understand," she said to me. "That's not fair to you, sweetheart. The people who understand the most are usually the ones who need to be asked for the least, and somewhere along the way we all decided that meant you needed asking the least of all. I'm sorry. I should have known better." That's the line. That's the one I carry. The people who understand the most are usually the ones who get asked for the least. It's not cruel on purpose. It's just what happens when a family quietly learns that one person will always absorb the disappointment so the rest of them don't have to feel it. The fallout wasn't dramatic. There was no big blow-up, no slammed doors, no years of silence. My mother and I had a long, hard conversation about 2 weeks after the wedding, sitting at her kitchen table, where she admitted, fully, without excuses, that she'd let Brianna's urgency steamroll a decision that should have been obvious. She said she'd been doing it their whole lives, without meaning to, smoothing things over for the daughter who asked the loudest and trusting the daughter who never seemed to need it. Brianna and I talked too, eventually, once the wedding noise had settled and the guilt had stopped making her too ashamed to call. She told me, honestly, that some part of her had wanted, just once, to be the one everyone rearranged their lives for, instead of always being the one who got compared to her steady older sister. I understood that more than I expected to. It didn't make what happened okay. But it made her human instead of a villain in my head, and that mattered more to my own healing than any apology did. Her marriage to Curtis happened that fall, a smaller affair than the engagement party had been, and I went, and I sat in the front row, and I clapped when she walked down the aisle, because whatever had happened between us, I'd never once stopped wanting good things for her. My mother has never again, in the 2 years since, let an "I need everyone there" from Brianna outweigh a commitment already made to me. I notice these things. It's the kind of pattern recognition my job trained into me a long time ago, and I don't think that training ever turns off, not even at home. If there's a lesson in any of this, it's not really about weddings, or engagement parties, or even about Brianna. It's about what happens to the people in a family who are quiet and capable and steady, the ones everyone assumes will be fine because they've always been fine, right up until the day they aren't, and nobody even notices because nobody ever thought to ask. I used to think being the strong one meant I didn't get to ask for things. I know better now. Strength isn't the same as going without. Sometimes the steadiest person in the room is the one who most needs somebody to finally say, out loud, in front of everyone, "I choose you too." If you've ever been the dependable one in your family, the one nobody worried about, until you needed someone to worry about you, tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. And if stories like this one mean something to you, go ahead and subscribe. There's always another one to tell.